Hello, today we would like to present you about the life in Persia Empire and how it was better than the other civilizations. So the Persian Empire started from 558 BC and it ended in 330 BC. The research in these presentations are all done by Manaki, Yo, Yutaro, and Joe. Before we begin about the benefits of Persian Empire, let me explain where it was located. As you can see in the map, Persian Empire was located in the Middle East, near Arabia and India.
I introduced about city. There were a lot of famous cities in Persia. For example, Susa, Babylon, Damascus, and Persepolis. And the Persian was allowed another country's culture. Therefore, there were a lot of different culture cities. This, this picture is Susa city. That was one of the capital cities in Persia. There were many stone houses and there were uncultured streets. These cities are important for us to know about Persian culture, life, and religion. I introduced about city. There were a lot of famous cities in Persia. For example, Susa, Babylon, Damascus, and Persepolis. And the Persian was allowed another country's culture. Therefore, there were a lot of different culture cities. This, this picture is Susa city. That was one of the capital cities in Persia. There were many stone houses and there were uncultured streets. These cities are important for us to know about Persian culture, life, and religion.
Next, I'm going to talk about the centralized government and laws of ancient Persia. The empire was ruled by one king who was a dictator, and the empire was divided into 20 provinces or satrapies. Each were ruled by a governor called satrap. So there was about 20 satraps, and they worked for the king. The satraps enforced the king's laws and taxes, so they made sure that the citizens paid tax and that they followed laws which the king made. The Persian Empire was the first to attempt to govern many different racial groups on the principle of equal responsibility and rights for all peoples. This means that they were the first government to actually go against racism and to give freedom to everyone. So the influence is that if this didn't happen, racism could be a bigger problem now.
In Persia, the land was so pure of agriculture, and they focus on hunting animals for food. Hunting and fishing is important source of food. They raise cows, goats, and sheep. They bury brew, wheat, and olives and wine. This is significant to know what did they eat in that age and where are the resources from. Nowadays, how the resources are evolved from this ancient age.
So the job specialization in the Persian Empire. There were few jobs that people could choose, and those one of them were farmers. And since farming was one of the most important job in Persia, where they had to make food for people living in ancient Persia. And there were two basic type of farming, and one is family farm where they only produced what their families needed so not for the others. And large farms, usually the rich people owns a really big farms and they produce foods and sell them in the market. So yeah, if they had enough big enough farms, they can choose to produce and sell in the market. But if they have small farms, then they can only produce foods for their families to live. So the next job is the landlords. So it's quite similar to today's landlord system where the rich people in the ancient Persia own many lands and that they could rent to make shops and houses to other people. And similar today, popular places were really expensive and yeah. And the laborers. So the laborers were hired by the government to build buildings, roads, and make a city. So so government give them an order and they get paid to work making stuff and yeah. Soldiers. So male under the age of 50 were sometimes forced to join the military during war, and some people did not does not have a choice to join whether to join or not. Like in emergency, they are forced to join the war. So social classes and structures. So they were basically eight classes in this ancient Persia, and I would like to explain about the ancient Persian social hierarchy. So first, the top king is at the top of the Persian Empire, and his family were the next. So to become a royal family, so the king's family, it has to share blood with the king or adopted by a king's family. So yeah, they were the top of the hierarchy. They had the most power in the ancient Persia. And the next is the priest. In Persian Empire, priest was known as the only person who can connect people and lands and gods. So they were known as the only person who can communicate with humans and gods. So simply they were treated different from others since they were the only one who can do that. So next is the aristocracy. So aristocracy helps king to work in a comfortable environment. They advise, guide, and help the king to organize his kingdom. It's simply like a helper in nowadays. They take care of the king and organize his things, similar to the secretary. And next is the soldiers and the people in the military. In ancient Persia, working in military and fighting for the king was a big honor. Therefore, the soldiers and their families were treated special by the king. So, as I said, um, in in an emergency case, they were called off, forced. Some were forced to join the soldiers and fight for their land. And the next is the trader. So the middle class people in Persia was usually a trader who trade goods that are produced in different place and earn profit from it. So they trade things that is produced like something like vegetables, weapons, clothing, and they can only get a really small profit, but people who enjoys doing those earning a small profit were usually a trader. And then next up is the craftsmen. Craftsmen were people who make or build furniture, tools, art piece, and jewelry. So they make and construct buildings and yeah, tools like spoon. And the next is the peasants. And peasants usually own a farm. So simply a farmer and those people are the peasants. They own the farm and yeah, they can be a laborer. And the last, the lowest of the hierarchy is the slave, and they are the lowest in the ancient Persian social hierarchy, where they will have to continue working without any benefits. However, like similar to today, they not similar to today, but they were a doctor. There were some slaves were doctor, and it, slaves' job were really different from today. So this social hierarchy that I have explained is somehow similar to our government today, where king is like the prime minister, president, and the what was it? There's a secretary, and yeah.
The next topic is trade. The early Persian lands were so poor, therefore Pakra was their main economy. They got a lot of land which were India, Babylon, Egypt, and all these areas in India. Accordingly, they become big economic countries. Persia controlled many industries, agriculture, a lot of trade, and rich deposits of metals and other resources. In addition, before the Persians, there were four big countries, and each country they had been developed. Persians invaded these four countries. Therefore, merchant trade routes were expanded. Moreover, Persia made easy trade with tax and made lots of goods to trade. The Persian king also made system of banking, Paris Western, and many international trade, and also money. Therefore, a lot of use of trade and East and West cultures were increased, interactive. In addition, a lot of people become to use that money.
Next, I will talk about state religion. The Persian Empire allowed people to keep their own beliefs and cultures, so this meant that they can follow any religion they wanted. However, most people followed a religion called Zoroastrianism. This religion believed in one main god called Ahura Mazda. The influence of this religion, Zoroastrianism is the oldest of the revealed world religions and is probably had more influence on mankind directly and indirectly than any other single faith. This was a quote said by Mary Boyce, who was an expert on ancient religion. It is said that there is still about 200,000 people who still follow this religion today. Religious historians believe that the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim beliefs concerning God and Satan, the soul, heaven and hell, etc., were all from the Zoroastrianism religion.
Okay, so now I would like to explain about the development of science and writing. So what Persians invented. And surprisingly, they have invented many things that helps our life really become really convenient and better. So the first up is the wind power machine. So this wind power machine was used to grind grain and pump the water on the ground. So it's not like the windmill today, but it's really similar. It should be called the first windmill. And what they do is they just pump the water and grind grain, but not create electricity or whatever. So and the next is the wind tower. So this is used to keep the room cool during summer and warm during the winter. During hot and sunny days, the cold wind blowing goes inside the tower and cools down the room in the basement. So when the cool wind goes in the wind tower, it stays at the basement and keeps the room clean. It's really similar to like the air conditioners nowadays, and yeah, they invented the first air conditioner. Without this invention, we might never had an air conditioner in the house. How surprising. And the ancient Persians were able to live in a very comfortable, so I'm telling you that this Persian Empire is the best amongst all civilizations, since they were able to live in a very comfortable environment such as wind tower and the windmill stuff, and yeah, they got to live in an environment with a lot of convenient things and tools. And the language, so the language writing that the Persian used is the cuneiform, and the language is called Old Persian. The ancient Persian wrote this on clay, so this right picture on the right is the old Persians, and yeah, they write this on the clay and emblems. And this, from our research, it tells us that this language is one of the oldest Indo-European language spoken, and this is not known when this language was started using. And yeah, this language might be the root for most European countries' language, since they were the first and yeah, the oldest Indo-European language.
Art and architecture in Persia is generally characterized by firm lines, extensive detail, and bold use of color. Persia blended many influences to create a rich diversity of arts. Persia is famous for its architecture and production of exquisite miniatures and carpet. This is important because the current Iran's art is taken from these arts. The surface the Persian art is the Persian art surface is covered with stylized abstractions of animals such as water birds and ibex. Art and architecture in Persia is generally characterized by firm lines, extensive detail, and bold use of color. Persia blended many influences to create a rich diversity of arts. Persia is famous for its architecture and production of exquisite miniatures and carpet. This is important because the current Iran's art is taken from these arts. The surface the Persian art is the Persian art surface is covered with stylized abstractions of animals such as water birds and ibex.
Next, I'll talk about military. They had a strong and enormous army led by a guy called Cyrus. The army consisted of mainly four types of units: spearmen, foot archers, light cavalry, and heavy cavalry. They were also an army called the Immortals, which consisted elite soldiers and 10,000 men. Their main job was to protect the king. The soldiers looked like this, and the spearmen were like this. Thank you for listening. The end.